Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Very much appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend a little bit of time with Huawei and learning about our philosophy of the campus of the future. And we have two very excellent presenters today, Thomas Keenan and AJ Gupta, who are both directors of product marketing at Huawei, and a wealth of information will be flowing from them regarding this topic. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone that if you attend this entire webinar, you will receive a $10 Starbucks gift card, so we do appreciate your time and we want to give a small token of appreciation from Huawei. As always, we're going to have some polling questions kind of scattered throughout the presentation, so when we ask those, we very much appreciate you participating in the polls, and we'll share the results with you so you can see how all your peers are responding to these questions. And these things help give us an idea how to guide the presentation and also just provide some overall information about where you are relative to the subject that we're talking about. We also do very much welcome questions from the audience. So you'll notice on your GoToWebinar interface there's a Q&A panel. So if you have questions as we're going through this, please ask those questions and we'll answer those all at the end. And we will try to answer some of those in real time as well through the Q&A window. But please keep the questions coming. And then finally, we are recording this session, and it will appear on the Huawei website, as all of our webinars are. So if you haven't seen those, go and look at our resources page on the Huawei Enterprise USA website, and you'll see all the recorded webinars that we've done in the past. And this one will be up there probably within 24 hours. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Thomas Keenan to get us started, Director of Product Marketing with Huawei.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate the introduction there, and thanks to all who have joined the conference, Building Your Campus for the Future. On the next slide, let me take a very quick look at the agenda for today. And as that's coming up, let me start to describe it. We have 4 parts to this exciting webinar. First, let me give a background on Huawei, the company, and the fact that we are a very robust and global partner to a wide variety of clientele. And a lot of you probably know more about us if you've attended several of these webinars or even 1 or 2, but we always like to ground everyone with those details if you're brand new to the webinar experience. Secondly, I will hone in on some of the challenges for today's educational campus, both from a student, a teacher, and administration perspective. What are those challenges those folks are facing? And then also, what is Huawei's Agile solution or the answer to those challenges, and how do we go about implementing that? Speaking of implementation, I will quickly then cover a case study that we have in the southern part of the U.S. in Texas, as a matter of fact. Someone who's actually gone ahead and put in the solutions that we're talking about. And then we'll quickly cover, via our moderators, some various promotions and exciting switching money offers that we have currently going on, and we'd love for you to be able to take advantage of those. So let me then quickly move to the next slide. For a lot of you, as I said, this might be old information, but for several of you it probably is not. Huawei is, and let me give you a snapshot here of who we are and what we do. We're a global player, extremely well known outside the U.S., and we continue to work on making it well known in the U.S. as well. As you can see, we've continued to see robust growth in our overall revenues, even during the most recent downturn while several of our competitors faltered. And we most recently reached about $40 billion in annual revenue in the last fiscal year. We do serve 45 of the world's top 50 telecom providers. And why you probably care on the enterprise about carriers and the fact we've sold to them for a long time is that these are the folks who really will make a solution bulletproof, because in their world, the network is their money. They're not producing a separate product. If their network is unavailable, their revenue stream is unavailable. And so that makes it very important to them to have this stuff work. We are deployed in over 140 countries, speaking of footprint, and we serve roughly 1/3 of the world's population. Next couple of facts: 150,000 global employees and 70,000 dedicated just to R&D, lots of PhDs. Kind of as a quick point of comparison, we have as many employees as Cisco has headcount overall. We are a top contributor to industry standards, and as I mentioned, we have about 2 billion end users. A little bit up close on Huawei in the USA. We were established on the carrier side down in Plano, Texas. That was the North American regional office that was established in 2001. We have given about $6 billion in contracts to U.S.-based technology companies, and we launched the U.S. enterprise piece of the business in October 2011. Some of you may have been with us at Interop in New York when we launched that piece of the business. I also get this question a lot. We do provide a full portfolio of professional, technical, and learning services to provide that full services footprint that you would expect out of a global and major enterprise player. And I get this question a lot. We absolutely provide a very solid services and support solution to back up all the hardware and software that we sell. Moving on to the next slide, Dan, a little bit up closer on the incremental contribution to the U.S. economy from an employee growth and a procurement perspective. We have always been and will continue to be a large contributor to the U.S. economy. Since 2006, for example, we have purchased nearly $30 billion in goods and services from U.S. technology leaders, companies including ADI, Broadcom, Dell, Freescale, HP, IBM, Microsoft, the list goes on, Qualcomm, and Texas Instruments. And such procurements totaled almost $7 billion in 2013 alone. So a very robust, very large contributor to local economy, both from an employee perspective, local hiring, local development, and procurement perspective. Let's take a quick snapshot on the next slide of our R&D centers worldwide. It's very much a follow-the-sun model. We have over 23 centers of industrial competence, as we call them, or global competence worldwide. Strong U.S. presence, both here in Plano as well as Santa Clara, California. We have a local development effort that is therefore backed up by, at all times, our headquarter folks back in Shenzhen, just north of Hong Kong. And again, we have a follow-the-sun model where you can rest assured that your solution, if you have a local engineer working on an issue that you have with the network, we're there to back you up and to be in contact with our headquarter forces, and they can actually be brought to bear to provide 24/7 coverage for anything that might come up. So a very strong global presence helping back up a very large local enterprise presence as well. Provides you a huge advantage. Moving ahead to focus in a little bit on our investment in innovation. Well, our R&D investment percentage to total sales revenue stands up very well versus any of our major competitors. It's been continuously increasing, which a lot of them cannot say. And in 2013 alone, our R&D investment exceeded $4.8 billion. And again, at present, Huawei does have 70,000 employees specializing in R&D alone. From an innovation perspective, as a leading global ICT solution provider, we've made huge amounts of contributions to international standards organizations, including more than 23,000 standards-related manuscripts, being a member of 150 international standards organizations, and occupying leadership positions in over 180 cases in international standards organizations. All these things allow Huawei to do a couple things. Number one, to help create the road ahead in the industry, and also to bring the best innovations to bear to profit you, our customer, on your network each and every day. So when you have a company on your side pushing the future envelope, this is the place that you want to be. I think on the next slide I'm showing how the market has noticed exactly what Huawei's been doing. We do have a very good standing in what we call the Gartner Magic Quadrants in a variety of technologies, whether that be switching, data center switching, firewall, and also intrusion detection. We have garnered several awards in this space, and also a variety of other innovations awards, including being noticed by publications such as Heavy Reading, such as Light Reading, such as the IEEE forums, as well as several industrial design firms for the work that we have done in the wireless networking space. So you can pretty much Google Huawei innovation, and you'll come up with a variety of areas that we've both been contributed and that we've been gotten accolades in the past. Okay, so having given you a little bit of a Huawei background there, now that you've got some of that background, you fundamentally need to understand what's going on in our industry in order to understand the value you can bring. We're very much seeing the convergence and merger of information technologies such as mainframe, the server client, with communication technology such as digital communications, mobile comms, and mobile broadband. This convergence, as we see it, is being driven by three major trends. Number one, the adoption and use of cloud models, whether that be private, public, or hybrid. The explosion of mobility in almost too many verticals to mention, whether that be education, retail, public sector, many others. And also the consumerization of IT, where technologies previously seen in the enterprise have now migrated strongly to the consumer base and vice versa. So this whole concept, for example, of BYOD, or bring your own device, where employees are more and more taking consumer technologies and bringing them onto enterprise networks, that is highly driving the convergence of those markets. And so at the end of the day, if you believe these trends are going on, and we see them going on each and every day, it makes sense, we think, to ally yourself with a company that spans these technologies and is equally at ease in the worlds of enterprise, service provider, and consumer. And might I suggest that Huawei is exactly that type of a company. So on the next slide, at the end of the day, you can leverage our expertise, as I said, in all three segments, whether that be the carrier networks, where we help operators to become ICT service providers, in the enterprise, where we're providing cloud-based ICT solutions and technical services to the enterprise, and finally to the consumer. We are the #3 handset vendor in the world, and we are working very, very judiciously on diversification and customization in mobile internet, digital home, and what we call the Internet of Things, where more and more things over time continue to get connected to the internet and provide more and more endpoints to control and to manage. So turning from that area in the background on Huawei in the market, let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges we've got going on in traditional teacher-centric education. This is where the space is today. Really, there's three perspectives you can bring to this game. Number one, you can have the student's perspective. Number two, there's the teacher. And then finally, there's the executive, if you would, or the education ministry. Number one, from a student perspective, we've all been here. We've all been to the place where textbooks historically have been slow to be updated and contain dull content. Learning is done in a very one-way, passive manner, where it's teacher says, you listen. And number three, where resources are often lacking or not shared very efficiently between students. From a teacher's perspective, there's kind of what we call exhaustion via chalk, or the need to continuously repeat class after class, writing things on the board, repeating heavy teaching work content, and finally, traveling to technology because the technology is not with you. From an executive administrative point of view, there are problems that keep them up at night, sharing of teaching resources, and the equalization of education among all types of students, no matter what kind of background they come from. So on the next slide, I think fundamentally what we can do is provide a better way for students to learn. We can move from this being this passive, one-way, boring experience from an area where teaching occurs not just in the classroom but outside. Learning occurs at home, outdoors, and in virtual communities and areas of resources that allow students to scale their learning much more effectively. And so if you think I'm talking about networking and that convergence, that's exactly what I'm talking about, and that is what I think Huawei brings to the table for us today. So my vision for future education is on the next slide, where in essence I have 3 to 4 quadrants where I see interest improved, various teaching methodologies and modes, and coursework can be custom tailored to the student. Ubiquitous learning, a very important point. As opposed to just the classroom and one way, it can occur with anyone, anytime, anywhere, any access to any course. This is a whole concept that's beyond massively open online courses, for example, at universities, where the vast majority of students will not actually be in the classroom, but take the class remotely, and the instructor, the teacher, can obviously reach many more people much more efficiently in that way. Again, that provides more equal learning across the virtual learning community and all-around development, a better student body at the end of the day. Let's talk a little bit very quickly about the 3 challenges on college and university campus networks. Number one, and again in the next part of this presentation, we'll see how the Huawei solution starts to address these challenges that I'm talking about. Number one, this complex network access method, more and more students bring those devices onto our networks, and customized network applications that are being used on campuses. Number two, we have increasingly more complex network applications and low operations and management efficiency. The few IT resources that I have on campus are not being used as optimally as they could be. And then finally, there's lack of innovative transmission networks on a lot of campuses, and so we need to work to change that over time, and we think we can do exactly that for you. Okay, so to summarize again, hopefully I've been able to introduce Huawei as that global player whose expertise you can take advantage of, some of the challenges and what we see going on in the trends in the network in general, and then specifically in education. And so now what I'd like to do is time, I believe, for polling question number 1, and Nick, I'll let you take that one away.
Thank you, Thomas. That's a great intro to everything. Okay, so the first polling question is really tied to the network issues that Thomas was talking about, and one of the biggest requirements in education is great wireless coverage. So what we want to find out right now is where are you, or if you're a partner, where are your customers on the Wi-Fi adoption curve? Are they kicking tires and expecting to move to 802.11a? Are they using 802.11b, 802.11g, 802.11n, or 802.11ac? So just give us a feel for where either you or your customers are on this Wi-Fi adoption curve, and we'll share the results with you just in a minute. As you're going ahead and voting on this poll, we'd like to just remind you that if you have other questions for the presenters, please type them in the Q&A panel on your GoToWebinar interface, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. So we'll give you just another few minutes to vote here, or another few seconds rather, and then we'll share the results. Okay, let's go ahead and close it out, and we'll share the results. And you can see that the largest category is going to be 802.11n, followed in second place by 802.11g, and behind that 802.11ac. So pretty good information for AJ and Thomas as we go forward. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and send it back over, and I'd like to introduce AJ Gupta, who's one of our product marketing directors. And AJ, go ahead and take us away, showing us a little bit about Huawei's solutions for the education market.
Thank you, Nick. Let's talk about, based on the challenges that Tom just talked about, it's very clear that the traditional existing networks cannot meet those challenges. You know, if you look in the networking, we have been doing the same 3-tier architecture for almost 20 years now. It's really time to revamp and really come up with the next generation of the campus architecture to really meet the demands of these new inflection points that Tom was talking about, whether it's cloud, mobility, social, or big data. Keeping that in mind, Huawei announced something what we call our Agile Network solution last year. Basically, it's a next-generation enterprise solution that enables a swift and flexible network for services. The solution that we announced really provides that rapid service innovation that you needed now. We think it's almost 4 times better than the industry average, really helping the college campus and enterprises to seize those business opportunities. The Huawei Agile Network solution actually consists of 3 parts: Agile Campus, Cloud Data Center, and dynamically optimized WAN solution. Today, we're going to focus mainly on the Agile Campus solution. As you can see on the slide, with this Agile solution, we are now moving from a device-centric or technology-centric to a user or an experience-centric model. We are going into much more, instead of a best effort quality detection, we are moving into a real-time quality detection. Instead of having a single point of defense or multiple security elements in the network, we are moving into what we call a full-scale security collaboration. And then, obviously, we are moving from hardware-defined to software-defined, and that's going to helping basically from moving from static configuration to dynamic and automatic provisioning, deployment, and orchestration of your network. Moving on to the next slide here, kind of it illustrates the Huawei Agile Campus solution. If you look in the traditional network, that really faces 3 major problems. The number one being the lack of user experience. The lack of quality control for different services, it really results in a situation that really sort of diminishes the user expectations from a quality point of view. There is an inefficient service deployment. If you look in the traditional networking, both the services and networks are deployed separately actually. And the third problem that we have in the traditional network is basically very slow adaptation to the new services, which means it might take years for the traditional network to upgrade features, adjust the architecture, introduces new services, new application. It might take 12 to 18 months. You might have to wait before you can deploy the new application, new services actually. Huawei's Agile Network Campus solution really provides a highly adaptive network architecture that resolves these three major problems facing the traditional networking, namely lack of user experience, inefficient service deployment, and slow adaptation to the services. So the three foundation of our Agile Campus Network solution really includes, as illustrated on the slide, enhanced experience. For example, drops in service quality, unclear voice, everything can be dynamically adjusted by the network itself. Efficient operation and maintenance, simplifying your network management, providing you the so-called single pane of glass, really helping you to reduce your OpEx expenses. And finally, the quick service innovations. Deployment of new services become much easier, faster, and more agile. Instead of taking 18 to 24 months, you can now do that hopefully in 3 to 6 months to put the new services that your customers, clients, employees have been asking for. So let's move on to the next slide here. One of the features that we bring with this Agile solution is so-called Ubiquitous Services. Let's see what's happening in the traditional network, and then let's relate that to this Agile network solution here. From a Ubiquitous Services point of view, in the traditional networking, if you look at it, user access rights are very difficult to control. Use of different devices, different terminals, different operating system has an inconsistent experience actually. You cannot control the network security. Mobile traffic has got burst, it cannot be predicted, and network cannot adjust to that dynamically. As I said earlier, the manual static configuration is inefficient. So Huawei Agile solution really brings that to the platform, really delivering that consistent experience to users as they move and apply the user identity-based policies consistently from any location, whether remote, mobile, or in their home office. So our Ubiquitous Services is actually based and centered on the service and the experience. Now users can access the office network from any time, any place. Policies that are configured for the user devices, they will move with those devices and will remain consistent no matter where the users go. This thing provides you on-demand resource provisioning actually. Network resources such as bandwidth, quality of service, security isolation policies for the user devices. They move with the user as they move from place to place actually. Ultimately, the whole idea, as I said, is really providing the same network experience for the bandwidth from a latency and from a security point of view. If you look at our policies as we configure in our Agile network are completely context aware. So who is accessing? Is it teacher? Is it student? Is it somebody else? Which device it's coming from? Whether it's coming from a teaching device or coming from a employee-owned personal device that's being used for BYOD purposes. Is it coming from a laptop? Is it coming from a different terminal? Where is it coming from? Is the student accessing the content from the bus, school bus, or in a classroom or at home? What time is he accessing? And how is he accessing the content? All of those different parameters go really in order to create that policy that remain consistent no matter where the user, where the students, where those employees, where their teacher move from place to place here. So let's talk a little bit about the user group policy. User group actually is the user's policy attribute. User authorization policies can be divided or defined based on the user groups. For example, you can define a user policy based on the attribute like accessible server resources or the bandwidth control as shown on the slide here. So using those customized user group policy really helps in multiple ways. Things like it simplifies your network deployment. The dynamic user group authentication really replaces that old traditional way of doing authentication using WLAN or using ACL-based authentication modes. It really saves the user resources because multiple users can share resources based on the user group actually. Thus, ultimate idea is really simplifying your operation and maintenance and saving that OpEx expenses that everybody, every CIO or CXO is looking based on the budgets. Let's quickly move on to the next slide here, and if it let me move there. Okay, let's talk about our authentication here quickly here. So the current Agile network really brings multiple ways of doing the authentication actually. You can actually use 802.1x basically, or you can use a MAC-based authentication, or you can use a portal authentication. You can use authentication separately for IPv4 versus IPv6 users. As I talked about earlier, you can have a right-based or policy control for different users. In our Agile network, we provide 5 different levels of quality of service based on service, user, priority, port, etc. Ultimate idea is these flexible ways of doing authentication brings that agility in the network that you're expecting from your next generation architecture to be able to really meet the demands of the educational campuses where as they start deploying more cloud-based services, as they start moving towards social networking, you really need to make sure that different multiple authentication methods can be deployed using the same policy that you have created for that particular user. So Nick, I think it's time for polling question number 2.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, AJ. Okay, well, what we want to find out now is who is your current switching vendor. Predominantly within your network, who is the #1 vendor that you're using currently? Is it Cisco? Is it HP? Is it Brocade Foundry? Is it Juniper? Or is it Dell Force 10? So go ahead and take a moment to vote on that. And we appreciate your ability to participate in the polls, and we'll show you guys the results here momentarily. AJ is going to go through a few more slides after this, and then we'll have an excellent case study that Thomas alluded to, one of our customers down in Texas that's implemented quite a bit of this technology inside their environment. So we're going to go ahead and just give you another few seconds, and then we'll close it out and show you overall results of the poll. All right, let's go ahead and close it, and we'll share the results. And no big surprise there. Cisco on top with 74%. Followed by HP, and then to a lesser extent Juniper and Dell. So pretty much what we would expect, I would imagine, Thomas and AJ. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to AJ so you can continue on.
Thanks, Nick. So let me go on to the next slide here and really talk of some of the salient features and attributes of the Agile network. The very first one being full programmability. Full programmability is a unique feature of Huawei's Agile network based on something which we call Ethernet Network Processor, and our POF, which is also protocol oblivious forwarding protocol based on OpenFlow 1.3 actually. what this feature really does, it allows networks to very quickly introduce and evolve new functions in a software-defined mode. The solution actually implements a new way of doing the networking based on both the control plane and packet forwarding plane. Usually, if you look in the current existing SDN vendors, it's the control plane that is programmable, but not the forwarding plane. But in the Huawei's Agile network architecture, and I think Huawei is probably the first one in the industry to do that, is implementing full programmability both at the control plane and the forwarding plane. And how it helps is really to allow new services, new functions to be really easily defined in a software-defined manner, actually. So really bringing you the next level of innovation that you expect from the next generation architecture. Let's talk about the real-time quality detection. In the traditional networks, actually, it's very hard to find the network faults. When I say that thing, it's always after the fact when somebody calls the network admin or IT administrator complaining that something is wrong and something is wrong and they cannot know what's going on, my network quality, my video, the YouTube video you might be looking at is not working very properly. The reason being, it's always after the fact in the traditional network. But Huawei has introduced what we call IPCA, Packet Conservation Algorithm for Internet. And what basically it does is, it really enables the network to detect the quality, accurately detecting the network link faults in real time. If a user's experience is diminished, for example, the network can automatically detect the fault and provide the detailed service logs for you to look at after the problem has been taken care of, basically. The main thing is network become a lot more automatic. I mean, we used the word self-healing long time ago, and I think finally the networks are becoming a lot more self-healing, a lot more taking care of itself even before the problem happens. The faults can be detected not just between the links, it can be detected on the module itself, on the chip itself, and thus really bringing that real time that is needed in the next generation networks here. Let's quickly talk about the next feature in the Huawei's Agile Campus Next Generation Network, what we call is wired and wireless in-depth convergence. In the past, if you look at it, wired and wireless networks used to be two different networks. Wireless network used to be an overlay on top of the wired networks, actually, which really creates more problems in terms of policies, security, controlling the quality of service, etc., etc. Why should there be two different networks? Huawei brings that true convergence between the wired and wireless networks. What I mean by that is basically if you look at our Agile architecture or in our Agile switch that we announced, all the access points actually can be configured as ports on that switch. The different access switches can be configured as the line cards on the Agile switch. So basically, really eliminating the need for the additional hardware for the access controller. Now the CAPWAP tunnel can be configured right from the Agile switch all the way to the access points, really bringing you that zero-touch configuration, which means you do not have to touch the access points. You just download the configuration onto our Agile switch, which will take the responsibility of updating the different access points and the access switches, thus giving you a single policy, true convergence between the two networks, basically resulting in one network as you expect from a next generation network. Let's quickly talk about our full security collaboration here. In the past, what used to happen is there used to be security elements defined at multiple places, or placed in multiple places in the data path. You have hundreds of firewalls, you have hundreds of IPSs, you have a couple of DDoS appliances all located somewhere in the network. Now with this Agile network, what we have done, we have defined this thing what we call campus controller and the shared resource pool of security devices. So now, before that, we did not have a full visibility into the whole network. But using this campus controller and the shared pool of security devices, it really brings a holistic approach to really implementing the security all throughout the network. Now we can collect security events on the entire network. Now, based on this security collaboration, we can perform what we call big data-based analytics, and thus much quickly we can respond to the security events on the entire network. Campus controller is going to apply the policies on the traffic. The policy says I need to implement the firewall services. Campus controller is going to divert that traffic to the firewall located in the shared resource pool, apply the firewall policies, and then send the egress traffic to the destination where it is intended to, the good traffic. So you can see lots of advantages here. It gives a complete visibility. Number one, you're really optimizing your security resources as opposed to deploying the security elements all throughout the network. You can now just collaborate with the rest of the traffic for using the security devices located in the shared resource pool now. Let's quickly kind of change a little bit gear here and talk about some of our BYOD architecture in the Huawei's next generation Agile network. As was alluded earlier, Huawei is probably the only company that brings the complete end-to-end BYOD solution. As you can see here on the slide, we have the complete portfolio of terminals and devices ranging from mobile smartphones to tablets to phablets, etc. We have the complete Wi-Fi gear from a networking point of view. We have the switching, routing, security, metro optical that you needed for connectivity. And then finally, on the right-hand side, we have the homegrown application, the minimum application that you might need for your BYOD, and an extensive partner network to bring you those additional third-party applications that you would need using the open SDK and open APIs that are available for any integrator or VAR to create that application and integrate with the Huawei's next generation network here. Quickly talking about some of the security elements from a BYOD perspective, Huawei has something what we call AnyOffice. It's a client that sits in the mobile devices. It really brings you not just the MDM, the mobile device management, but it's a combination of the MDM and secure VPN using the SSL VPN to the network. There are several things that the Huawei MDM provides, pretty much giving you the complete comprehensive control, whether it means enabling, disabling your USB ports, your device screenshots, GPS, your jailbreaking, your device get lost, wiping, doing the remote wipe, etc., etc. We also have what we call chip-level physical security, actually, using the ARM trust zones that is pretty prevalent in the industry. The basic fundamental point is Huawei is the only company that can bring their own terminals and devices and can customize those devices to your needs of the BYOD application. That doesn't mean that we cannot work with something that you might already have. So you can pick and choose the different elements in the BYOD architecture that you would need to deploy that BYOD or bring your own wearable as the new trend is coming up actually. Quickly talking about some of the highlights of our wireless and LAN perspective from a networking point of view in the BYOD architecture. We have launched what we call the 802.11 AC, actually I think a year and a half ago actually. And with the .11 AC, we bring multiple innovations in the market today. For example, you can actually use the so-called the uniform coverage, the smart antenna onto the .11 AC, really bringing you that consistent coverage and that focused and targeted coverage as opposed to the current problems of having coverage holes. We can do what we call small multi-user scheduling, which means you can detect the user and then flexibly adjust some of those radio coverage. For example, if the signal strength is lower than 75 decibels, we can deny access really to that particular device or terminals. The main idea is the network becomes a lot more real-time, quality conscious as opposed to being responsive after receiving complaints from the user. So remember, I started the presentation that it's been 20 years and the 3-layer architecture hasn't changed, and now it's time to change it, and that's what exactly our Agile network does, really flattening the whole network into 1 layer or 2 layers right now, bringing you that really the service control, the service expansion, the application deployment in a much agile way, giving you the ability to really program even the forwarding path as opposed to just the control path as and when you start deploying some of those SDN architecture. So elastic and scalable, highly efficient, zero plug and play basically, and then finally stable and reliable and future-proofing your network for years to come. There are some more reports that are available as well. So and I got something on my slide here. So, so there are some on-demand reports that are available. You can customize these reports from a role-based access control. If it's an IT, if it's a decision maker, you can actually really configure the policies based on that. And I think something is on my screen here. Oops. Did I switch off? Okay. So I think after, yeah, I think we're gonna move on to the next slide here, and I think I maybe lost it. Can you guys see the slide here?
Yeah, you're still sharing. It's just it seems like it's out of presentation mode.
Great. Okay. So moving on to the next slide here, I'm gonna just quickly talk about our Agile switch here, which we launched last year. There's a lot of information that's available on the website, and I do encourage you to go and read from the website here. This kind of slide shows you the Huawei's core competitiveness. As Tom was alluding, we have a major influence on the standards organizations. We have folks, for example, in the Open Networking Foundation, the chair of mobility use cases from Huawei. Our VRP8, our operating system, is pretty much evolving into the cloud operating system. And then Huawei has been developing their own chips, and the solar chips and the ENP that I just talked to you earlier. So at that time, I'm going to pass it to Nick for the polling question number 3.
Okay, thanks, AJ. This is our final polling question, and what we want to find out now is, of all the different issues that Thomas and AJ have been talking about, what's the top issue that keeps you up at night regarding your campus network? Is it security issues? Is it the manageability? Is it performance related? Is it the ability to handle the scaling and the bandwidth requirements, or is it something else altogether? So we'll give you a few seconds to vote on that, and then we'll share it with you. After this, we're going to have a brief case study where Thomas will go over one of our really successful customers who've deployed all this technology that we've talked about, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the promotions that we've got, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So I'm going ahead and going to close the poll out here, and I'll share with you guys. So you can see the number one issue quite predominantly is security. Kind of almost a tie between manageability and scaling, and then to a lesser degree performance. So good input kind of gives us a good feel of what some of your challenges are. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and transfer back over and give it to Thomas to talk a little bit about Crowley.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate the poll. It's some very interesting results there, and quite frankly, they lock very heavily in with what we found out with the Crowley Independent School District and their top of mind concerns. So Crowley ISD is a public K-12 school district based in Crowley, Texas. It serves schools based in Crowley as well as portions of Fort Worth and Edgecliff Village. It spans about 27 campuses, so it is a good-sized district. It's got over 15,000 students and 1,500 employees, so certainly nothing small going on here. So when we sat down with Crowley ISD, three main business challenges bubbled to the surface. Number one, they were definitely getting growing network traffic loads and a much more highly mobile and transient population, and also the need for network flexibility. And they, like a lot of other school districts throughout the country, have suffered budget cuts in the past few years. If you've been reading the papers at all, you know that both teacher and budget cuts are occurring everywhere. And so the real need for TCO is absolutely imperative, low TCO. So what we think Huawei was able to do was to take that limited budget that Crowley had and actually get 2 to 3 of their major projects done, whereas other vendors might have allowed them to do part of one. And so that ended up being a huge win for Crowley as well as Huawei to be able to go out and do those expansion projects, those WLAN projects, those security projects, rather than picking one and having to wait for the next year to do the second one. Number two, the second business challenge is definitely communications being up 24/7. We don't typically think of K through 12s as being a 24/7 operation, but believe me, if you talk to any teacher, they are up late and they are up early, grading papers, getting communications out, going on things like a lot of schools have what we call a school loop, where assignments are made and parent-teacher contact occurs. I know I am personally up sometimes at 1 and 2 o'clock banging away on the PC, and sure enough, I'll get a response from that teacher in a couple of hours. So schools have moved from the 4 walls and 8 hours to really a 24/7 operation, and that's absolutely critical to maintain that uptime. And then finally, as our poll indicated, secure and operations and communications are key. Communication security is totally paramount on campuses today, to say nothing of physical security, but sensitive information types like evaluations, scorecards, and budget transit that network and must absolutely be maintained confidentially. So at the end of the day, when we sat down, we designed a system for Crowley to support all those business challenges. The specific solution elements that we came up with included our AC6605 access controller that was backed up by AP6010 access points, providing a total of 600 megabits of connectivity for the students, teachers, and administrators, because we knew absolutely we've got those 3 stakeholders, as I mentioned before, that we had to satisfy. The S7700 series enterprise switch, a high-end smart routing switch to drive the core of their network, to be able to aggregate all those multiple links coming in from different schools throughout the district. We did provide also IP-PBXs, which provide professional IP telephony services for up to 1,000 ISD users. And then finally, to round out the solution, the 7910 and 7950 IP phones. As I mentioned, we provide an entire array of IP-based products, and IP phones are no exception. We think we've got a very innovative design in our IP phones that deliver a quick, easy-to-use, low IT intensive solution for communications throughout the district, and that's absolutely paramount, again, where you have very few IT personnel on campus. Special truck rolls not appreciated by a school administrator, costly. Got to be able to do a lot of things locally on campus and to have things be intuitive and easy to use. So that very quickly is an explanation of our solution for the Crowley Independent School District. At this point, Nick, let me hand it back to you to go through some of our switching promotions.
Excellent, excellent. So what we want to talk about is we really would like you guys to take an opportunity to try a Huawei switch if you haven't done so already. And Thomas talked about our ability to start out in the carrier space where you have these hardened solutions, and now we've taken that same level of quality and robustness and brought it into the enterprise space. And so we really want to give people a chance to try these products. And so the promotion that we have going right now says that if you work through any of your local VARs, and you want to buy a Huawei switch, we will match the price of any competitor's product. Right here in this table we're showing both Cisco and HP competitive products and the equivalent Huawei switch that maps to those versions of the other competitors. And not only will we match the price, but we'll also give you an instant rebate as another added reason to try the Huawei product. So this promotion is good all the way through Q2, so through June 30th. And it's just a chance for you to put a Huawei product in your environment and just get a feel for how it works and how it performs relative to other products that you have in your environment. And as Thomas said, we're getting a tremendous amount of feedback about customers who are using Huawei and where that's then allowing them to just do a lot more with their budget than they are with some of the existing vendors. So that's basically what we want to kind of impress upon you relative to this promotion. So if you have a current VAR that you're dealing with, talk to them about this, have them contact Huawei, and we have a number of other VARs. If you want us to recommend one, we can recommend one of the hundreds of VARs that we're dealing with in various different geographies as well. So that's a bit about the promotion. I think what we'd like to do now is just save a few minutes for Q&A. So check out the contact information here. If you haven't done so, please look at the Huawei Enterprise USA website. It's a vast area of information and various product information. We have a special partner section for our resellers where they can go on and get training, and then they can get pricing information, and then we also have just a variety of content there that's very relevant to everything we've been talking about in the entire Huawei portfolio of solutions. If you just want to send an email question, the huaweiinfo@huawei.com is the email address we want you to send to, or if you want to call 855-472-9656, calls directly into our inside sales team, and they can either answer your questions or find the answers to any questions that you may have. So with that, we'd like to open up for questions, and we did receive quite a few questions, so we're going to go ahead and spend the last few minutes talking about those. So the first question, not sure if Thomas or AJ wants to handle this, but the first one is, I'm used to selling Cisco iOS. How hard is it going to be for me to learn the Huawei operating system?
So sure, Nick, let me take a crack at that, and then obviously AJ chime in. I'm sure you've got some valuable insight here too. So the great thing about Huawei, we have one common routing platform. We call it VRP, or Virtual Routing Platform. It is one look and feel across our product lines, which differentiates us from the competition. We find that when we have people visit us at trade show booths, we show the CLI, we show the various commands, that there's a very easy transition to the world that they might be coming from, whether that be Cisco or someone else, and to ours. And also, I think the remark I get quite a bit, Nick, is that, wow, you guys have got one routing platform across all your switches and routers. I'm used to, companies that have acquired, dozens and dozens of other companies and are bringing all that software into the milieu, and therefore, I have to kind of hop between operating systems. Huawei has not grown by acquisition. It's very much organic, and I think that's one of our huge advantages. And so I think you'll find that transition to be quite easy. AJ, certainly go ahead and add some comments there.
Sure. I'll just add two quick comments here. Huawei's operating system, VRP, just like iOS, is very much a modular architecture and multi-threaded operating system. So if you know iOS, if you understand that operating system, it should not be a very steep jump. It should be a quick learning to get onto the Huawei VRP 8 because the fundamentals are kind of similar. Okay. So Nick, for the next question.
Okay, the next one has to do with interoperability, and the question says, I have Cisco and other vendors' networking products in my environment. How would it really work if I put Huawei switches in there with those other vendors?
So let me jump in and give a very specific, very personal example, because I was in charge of all the marketing around this. We have done two interop NOCs, the Network Operations Center, which brings together the finest minds, networking minds in 15 to 16 companies. And we actually hot stage in Brisbane, California, and then ship to the Interop trade show a network that needs to run for the entire Interop and provide wired and wireless access to the thousands and thousands of vendors as well as attendees who come to the show. The only correct answer there is that the network is up and running and that there is no finger pointing between any of the vendors. And so I'd be very, very happy to hand the case study to you in a personal email to show that that is exactly what has happened in those NOCs that we have run. And it's a real testament, a point that Huawei takes very seriously interoperability. There is no finger pointing. The customer only cares the network is up and running. And that's exactly what happened in the 2 to 3 interops where we have actively participated in that NOC. And I think you'll find that as a general comment is exactly the way that we behave. And that you'll find with interoperability in general in all our networks. AJ, any additional comments?
No, that's good. Thanks, Tom. Yeah. Nick, any more?
Excellent. Yeah, I think we have time for just one more, and this final question is, I want to see a live demo of these solutions. What's the best way to arrange that?
So, Tom, maybe you can add to that, but I think the best way to get there are some demos that are available online. We would be happy to provide you that information. Or the best thing is to really contact your local sales rep from Huawei and arrange for that meeting, and we'll be happy to really give you some of the live demos of some of the new products. And also, I should mention one thing here. A lot of this gear that we also have a EBC center that's going to happen pretty soon in the U.S. actually, so we'll be happy to show you some of the products there as well.
Thomas, any other points to add to that?
I just want to real quickly, we do have a couple of demo centers that I could mention. We do have a demo center in Plano, and then also in the Cupertino, California office if you're local there. If those don't work out for you, please do go ahead and contact one of our sales reps, one of our VARs. And again, like we said, we have online resources as well as the ability for our sales reps to actually bring the gear to you.
Yeah, we're also constantly attending trade shows. So just in the last 2 months, we've been to the RSA conference, we've been to Interop, as Thomas mentioned, and we've been to the NAB show. So any of the large trade shows, Huawei usually has a great presence and brings various gear that we can demo at those locations as well. Well, look, as always, we want to be mindful of everyone's time. We're at the top of the hour here, so I'd like to give a big thank you to Thomas and to AJ for their excellent presentation. And again, thank you to everybody in attendance in the audience. If you want a recorded version of this webinar, it will be available on our website, the Huawei Enterprise USA website, within 24 hours. So thanks again, and be on the lookout for another great webinar from Huawei coming up in the near future.